All right, so in the last newsletter I sent out, I explained how we used data on our class retention rates to change or adapt our curriculum to make a better class experience for everyone. And I didn't really go much into depth on what retention data we were looking at. Our company uses iClass, so they have some reports. Way back when I first started digging into retention, I didn't either see the reports or they weren't available to me. So I used the data warehouse for a while. That's all to say, I'm going to show how I use the reports in iClass to get the data, and I'll kind of walk through how I would use it if I wasn't able to run these reports. I won't be using the data warehouse. I'll just be using iClass, and then I'll kind of run you through kind of in my head what I would do um, if I didn't have access to iClass or just had a different enrollment system. And I started out being kind of confused on the reports, so hopefully this helps clarify some stuff. And I started by looking at the students tab. The first report I had access to was the student retention report, and it was useful. It still is useful. And um, what threw me off a lot, and I might mess it up still, is these date filters here. The as of date, or sorry, the retained date down here is the date that the report's using as comparison. So we're going to use mid-March, March 18th, because that's when our quarter 1 enrollment was basically finalized. We run reports on the third Wednesday of every month. And then the as of date is that whole time span. So we want to look at quarter 1, which is January to March. So again, January 1st all the way to March 18th. And we're going to filter this to just be the Ninja program because that's the program that I run. I didn't find a lot of, well, you can sort it by level down here. The tricky part with that is I'm not totally clear if someone were to drop that level, does that count them as a drop from the overall program? So I just kept it very simple. I just ran it for the whole program. Something's wrong. Uh-oh. I selected everything I need to select. Okay, so I just refreshed the page and it started working. I guess it just wanted to mess up my recording for a second. So I don't know what was going on there. Literally, all I did was click the refresh button up here. I didn't change any of my other settings. It's still, Queen City Ninja. The same dates, I believe. I didn't change anything. It just refreshed. So then we can click HTML, run the report, and you can see I've done it before. And it's going to pop up. Hopefully it loads. And you can see, your retained student count and your churned student count and your percentage. And, that's all great. I would probably compare it year over year because just having that number doesn't really help anyone. So we've done that. You can just drop this down a year. Sorry, and run the same report. I'm just going to do that really quick just to go through the motions again and show everyone what I was doing. So again, quarter 1 starts January to mid-March. This time it's 2025 because we're looking at last year. And then the retained date is that comparison date. So that's also mid-March of 2025. Still have Ninja selected as a program. Click the same button. Maybe drag the window to get it to load faster. And you can see 2025, our churn rate was, it's now 1% lower than it was last year, which is great. That means we're keeping kids in our classes, at least through quarter 1. And that's all fine. That's, you could stop there if you wanted to and just look at your student retention rate as a whole company or as a whole program. But I wanted to dig a bit deeper because I wanted to see how effectively we were moving kids up levels. And again, you have this level filter here. Maybe that's helpful for you. For me, it just kind of made the data a bit more messy to look at. So then I jumped over to this class tabs here and looked at class retention summary. And it pops up with a whole new report. And we're going to go through the same motions for the start and end date, and I'll explain the report in a second. So we're going to drop it back to January 1st all the way to mid-March, March 18th. And we actually need to bump this up a year. So it's January to March, and we're going to look at the Ninja program again. And this time, so down here in the class filters, this is where you can get more fine-tuned. We're just going to search for what we call our mini flyers. That's our first level. It's 5 to 6 year olds. And we're going to select all of them. I wish there was a select all button, but there's not. So you just have to go through and click all the boxes. We get a little finger workout while you're doing it. So then, this is 2026 quarter 1 for minis. You can run the report. I'm going to blur out the first column here because it says students' names and that just feels weird to me. But you can see these little check marks here, and that's just whether the student was enrolled in that month at that level. And since we selected all of these classes, it's spanning all of these classes to look at whether they've been enrolled in that level or not. So to me, this just provides more detailed information because I can see specific students, I can see total student counts, I can see, how many months of the quarter they've been enrolled in. And then what I looked at was the next level up, which we call, well, let me deselect all of these first. So I got to click all the boxes again. So we looked at our first level. Now let's look at our next level, which is our next age group up. That's the 7 to 8 year olds. So now we have all of our Mighty flyers selected for the same time span. And what we can do is run the report again. I'm going to blur out the first column again. And you can kind of compare and contrast. Again, you could do this by hand if you wanted to, and see, if students were on this minis flyer list and then were not enrolled in March, but then enrolled in Mighties in March, so they're on both lists, then they would count as a student who moved up a level. Or, maybe it's not March, maybe it's February. So you'll have to do either by hand, and I'm going to walk through that in a second. You can use Excel, you can use numbers. You could, again, on pen and paper if you wanted to. So what I would do, let's say I don't have these retention reports, I just have the ability to run a student report. In some way, shape, or capacity, I'm going to walk through, a very basic student report that I would run. I would select the first month, which is January of the quarter, and we always do the third Wednesday for our company. And I want to look at everyone who's currently enrolled as of that date. And again, whatever system you're using, try to build this same, setup. We have the option to have different enrollment types. I only care about class students. And then enrollment type status, active. That just means they're not doing a makeup or single day or trial. And then same thing with the program, the Ninja program, because that's what we're looking at. And then level down here, you can select, the mini flyers level. So you would run 3 different student reports for minis and then 3 different student reports for Mighties. And then again, going off of what I said earlier, having the year to just the year number for this year is great. But what about last year? So you'd run 6 more reports for last year. So that's the easiest way I can think of doing it if I didn't have access to the retention reports. And what I did is I took these reports, and you can see here in my File Explorer, I have the minis Q1 retention for 2026. I have the minis Q1 retention for 2025, for 25 with the Mighties, and for 26 with the Mighties. And then I took the shortcut option and just loaded them all into Claude here, and it gave me kind of a breakdown of all 4 of these reports. And it turns out, and I need to double check this data, but our minis seem to be retaining more, and we seem to be moving them to Mighties pretty well. So that was the basis for my newsletter. If you're interested, sign up for the newsletter. It's totally free. I guess I'll post the link if anyone cares. But I just wanted to share that. And, if I'm using these reports wrong, hopefully iClass will yell at me for it. But that was how we look at retention data.